Paternity Leave Bereavement Bill, as amended in committee, to be considered.
Now.
No amendments on consideration. Third reading, what day?
Now.
Mr Elmore.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr Deputy Speaker. I beg to move that the Paternity Leave Bereavement Bill be now read a third time. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank all those who have been involved in this bill's journey up to this point, particularly Widowed Young, the TUC, Gingerbread, and indeed, may I say, Mr Deputy Speaker, because I know clerks don't often receive praise in this House, but to Anne-Marie Griffiths, the Private Member's Bill Clerk, who's done sterling work on supporting me as we progress this bill. From the outset, this bill ambition is to help as few people as possible, and I set that out in second reading. Nobody has an ambition for a partner to be left after the mother dies in childbirth. As I said at the time, Mr Deputy Speaker, it is an unimaginable sense of grief, and you don't have to be a parent to understand the horror of how that would feel for anyone who is left behind. But I want to remind colleagues as to the main purpose of the bill in relation to paternity leave and bereavement. It's to introduce a much-needed right to leave for a bereaved partner from the first day of their employment. Such a provision will ensure that employed parents have the time, support and security in cases where their partner and the primary caregiver of their child has died in the most tragic of circumstances. While the number of people who find themselves in this situation is mercifully low, with there being around 180 maternal deaths within 12 months of childbirth a year in the UK, it is crucial that parents in this position can take time away from work to care for their child without needing to rely solely on the goodwill of their employer. And I am pleased that the bill will remedy this gap in the law. As explained at second reading, it was necessary to make significant amendments to the bill at committee stage. To enable these amendments, a motion for instruction was passed before committee. The instruction allowed for the tabling of amendments which would have otherwise been out of scope. These changes will ensure that this legislation not only well-intentioned, but also has an effective position in achieving my overall ambition. I'll summarise the structure of the new bill. Firstly, the bill was amended to reflect that paternity leave will be used as the vehicle to deliver the entitlement rather than shared parental leave. For a bereaved partner to qualify for shared parental leave, the deceased parent must have had a recent history of employment that met a strict set of requirements. If the deceased parent did not have such a history, for example, as is in many cases, a stay-at-home mum, then there would be no shared parental leave entitlement for the surviving parent to access, which defeats the objectives of my bill. By contrast, paternity leave is not dependent on any other entitlement. Therefore, opting for this approach means that more parents will be eligible. I must be clear at this point that although the leave entitlement uses the paternity leave framework, it will specifically provide for bereaved fathers and partners. It will also include provisions which will only apply to them in these particular heartbreaking circumstances. The intention is that a bereaved father or partner will have up to 52 weeks of leave available during the first year of their child's life, from the day the mother or primary adopter of the child has tragically died. This ensures that they can act as the primary caregiver for this crucial first year and that they can focus all their attentions on their newborn child. Secondly, the bill was amended to enable regulations concerning the eligibility of adoptive and surrogacy parents for this entitlement. Once made, these regulations will allow the surviving parents of adopted children and of children born through surrogacy arrangements to be included. As a result, we will be able to offer the benefits of this entitlement to a wider range of parents from when the bill was first conceived earlier in the year. Thirdly, the bill removes the requirement for a continuity of service condition. Those who are employed parents who find themselves in this tragic situation of losing their partner at the same time as becoming a new parent can take the leave when it is needed. Therefore, it will be available to take from the first day of employment. Other amendments to the bill were made which removed the constraints of bereaved partners, enabling them then to access the entitlement. For example, the new bill removes the requirement that a parent who has taken shared parental leave cannot then take paternity leave. This gives the Secretary of State the power to provide that a parent who has taken shared parental leave before the death of their partner can still take paternity leave in such a situation. The new bill also allows provision to be made for situations in which the child also dies. Again, this is an expansion on what the original bill was going to achieve. It gives the regulations flexibility in such cases to allow the employee to stay on paternity leave for a period, even though they would not be taking the leave for the required purpose of supporting the mother or caring for the child. I think for any member in this House, to lose your partner is an unimaginable sense of grief to raise a baby. And I do speak as a father. The idea of losing a baby and being there to support your wife or your partner and to be able to manage that grief as best you can, knowing that you do have a job to go back to, at least gives a tiny piece of assurance while you're dealing with the most unimaginable sense of loss of losing a child, which is something none of us would ever want to experience. And I'm so pleased the Minister's been able to achieve that change through committee. The new bill also introduces 2 new powers, the first of which provides the ability to create, through regulations, enhanced redundancy protection to bereaved employees when they return from extended paternity leave. The second power enables regulations to be made to allow bereaved parents to have keep-in-touch days during their extended paternity leave. I think most members in the House will know this, but for the record, KIT days enable employees to work for their employer for a limited number of days without their right to paternity leave being affected. And I do think that is genuinely important, Mr Deputy Speaker, because as someone is looking after a child on their own, hopefully with the support of their family, having that option to slowly go back to work for X number of days is an important part of that person never recovering. I don't think anyone would recover from that scenario, but learning to cope and manage by going back into work. Finally, the bill was amended at committee stage to remove an additional and broad Henry VIII power, which would have enabled the bill to amend any Act of Parliament previously passed. Now, most members will know, Mr Speaker, I'm an opposition whip, so I'd imagine whether I'm in government or opposition, it's never a good idea to give the opposition whip's office control of all government legislation. So I think most members would be quite keen that this Henry VIII power has now been removed from any future bill and would be reviewed as a positive step. I think the key for me, and I want to pay tribute to the Honourable Gentleman for Broxtowe in my closing remarks when we conclude the debate, is this bill has been done through cross-party consensus, genuine cross-party working. I'd go as far to say there is no politics in bereavement. I made the point when the Chairman of Ways and Means was in the chair, Mr Deputy Speaker, during second reading, that one of the surprising things of politicians is that we are all human, which isn't always the perception of the broader public. And I say it in jest, of course, but I say it for a purpose. We all grieve and we all feel in exactly the same way. And the Honourable Gentleman came to me in the ballot and said, would you look at this? And I did. And it's through his work some 2 years ago as to why I'm pleased to be here today presenting a different bill, I accept, but a bill that nevertheless is the starting point of bringing about these changes, which I do think are needed. And therefore it is welcome that we can do this on a genuinely cross-party basis. I'll obviously have closing remarks, Mr Speaker, but my final point is this. The Minister and I have worked together over my entire 8 years in the House. He's been nothing but constructive. His officials have been superb in engaging with my small office, my team of one, as lots of MPs have as researchers, in getting this bill to this point. It's been an easy process to work with the Minister and his officials, but it's been an important one, because all being well, when this bill goes to the other place, it will receive royal assent and it will help those people in their darkest of hour, in that unimaginable sense of joy of being a parent, but also the unimaginable grief of losing the person you were expecting to do that job. And it is a job, being a parent, it's a job of work in every sense. But to do that on your own, and then have the risk of the insecurity of not having a job and all the things that go with that, is something that will be mitigated. So I pay warm tribute and my gratitude to the Minister for the way in which he's conducted himself, as he always does, with great courtesy, but also for the access he's given me to his officials to ensure we can deliver this small but important change to the law. And I so move.
Well, the question is that the bill be now read the third time. Darren Henry.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I could not be more delighted that this bill has finally reached this stage today. I'd like, of course, to put on record my most sincere thanks to the Honourable Member for Ogmore. I was delighted when he was selected in the private members' bill ballot and agreed to take forward this bill. He has worked incredibly hard to get this bill to this point, and I'm very grateful for all of his and his team's work towards getting this bill towards being in law. I have recalled Aaron's story on many occasions now, and as today may be the last chance I have to do so, I will recall it again. In 2022, my constituent Aaron came to my local surgery in Stapleford with his newborn son, Tim, in his arms. Aaron had tragically lost his wife, Bernadette, in childbirth and found that he did not qualify for leave as he had not been employed by his company for the required time. I was determined to change this so that no one else would find themselves in the position Aaron did. Aaron's company made good, but was not compelled to do so in law. Aaron has been here at every stage of this bill's progression through the House. He is once again here in the gallery today. He is a testament to the power constituents can have if they raise an injustice they came across within our laws. Changes such as this come from individuals such as Aaron and his relentless fight to ensure that no one finds themselves in the same position he did. As has often been said by myself, the Honourable Member for Ogmore and others, this change will not affect many people, but to those it does affect, the impact will be huge. The bill will ensure the individuals who lose their partner during childbirth have a day one right to leave. Allowing an individual not to have to worry about their employment during what is an incredibly difficult time can have a large impact on an individual. As the Honourable Member opposite mentioned, the cross-party support for this bill truly shows the non-political nature of this change. I was delighted when presenting a 10-minute rule bill on this topic to receive overwhelming support from across the House, from members including the members for Strangford, Bassetlaw, Gedling and many others who are not in their place today. To those members that have been with me pushing for this change, I would like to put on record my thanks. Also to my honourable friend, the Minister of State, who has been the Minister for Enterprise Markets and Small Businesses, who met with Aaron and I 2 years ago regarding this issue. He has consistently offered support and advice, and I know has worked with the Honourable Member for Ogmore to get this bill here today. I hope this bill does not have to be used by many. However, it is going to have a huge impact on people during a stage of life when support is most needed. That is something everyone supporting this bill today should be incredibly proud of. Most of all, Aaron. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sara Britcliffe.
Mr Deputy Speaker, can I firstly congratulate both members for bringing this to the Chamber today and getting this bill through. It's a very, very important bill, and I've always believed as members of Parliament our first and foremost duty is to help our constituents, and I think it's commendable what the member has done for his constituent Aaron. This is a horrible situation to even have to consider. I don't have children myself, but I actually put myself in the position of one of my constituents' partners because I've been campaigning myself for more support for women during the pregnancy because sadly one of my constituents committed suicide while she was pregnant with her daughter Elsie, and her partner Eddie was then left on his own, and this was through hyperemesis gravidarum, which is extreme pregnancy sickness. Now what we've done within the NHS is we are now seeing more support for women during their pregnancy there throughout pregnancy, and that is due to the campaign that her family have run. So I think these differences that we make in this chamber, what the Honourable Member for Ogmore has done today, will make a difference, but hopefully not to a lot of people. So congratulations to both members.
Brereton.
Mr Deputy Speaker, as many colleagues may know, I spoke in this place on the second reading of this bill, so I'm delighted to see it now progressing to this final stages in the Commons. I want to again commend my honourable friend, the member for Ogmore, in progressing his bill so amiably through to this stage. This is a highly emotive bill, and whilst the numbers that it will benefit each year are thankfully relatively small, the impact on those families is huge. Reflecting this, it has been extremely positive to see the wide cross-party support this bill has attracted, especially, of course, from my honourable friend, the member for Broxtowe, who I know has long campaigned on this issue. As I said during the second reading debate, and as a father myself, it is hard to imagine the impact and trauma a family must go through on the loss of a mother during childbirth. But tragically, these situations do happen, and so we must put in place the laws needed to properly protect the rights of those who remain to keep the family together. To support single parents in coping with raising a child or children alone, something which many will not have expected to have to ever face. Any parent will know juggling all the responsibilities of raising children alongside employment and everything else can be stressful at the best of times. So this bill helps to protect the rights of these families at the most traumatic and distressing point as they get beyond the horrific loss of a mother, with all the stresses and strains that such circumstances will entail. Helping give them the time that they need as they can best move forwards, both physically and mentally. I have read through the changes made at committee stage, and I do think these are sensible to ensure this bill achieves the best possible desired effect. The most significant change now refocuses the bill on addressing the specific issues through paternity leave, as opposed to what was originally envisaged through shared parental leave, creating those day one rights for paternity leave. This is particularly important change for those families where the deceased mother did not work. As it was proposed, there would not have been any shared parental leave to be accessed by the other parent, whereas paternity rights exist whatever the entitlement of the other parent. I think, as amended, the proposed extension to paternity rights is the best possible change, which will ensure more families going through these tragic circumstances can benefit from these changes. I think it's also important that rights are extended for those cases, as the Honourable Member for Ogmore said, for both the mother, where both the mother and child do not survive childbirth. This reflects the impossibly challenging trauma to get through losing both a partner and expectant child. Whilst I recognise that this bill does not do everything that was originally wished in terms of addressing this issue of pay, in an ideal world, of course, the issue of pay would also be resolved. But I think there is recognition that addressing this issue is more complex. I hope this is something which will continue to be considered further, and I will closely follow it. It should be recognised that many employers will already go over and above to support employees both with leave and financially during such circumstances. I hope this will be treated as a floor and not a ceiling when it comes to the support offered. And there will of course be other bereavement support which they may also be eligible for. I do think this bill is a major step forwards in securing the rights of families going through the toughest of circumstances of losing a mother. It will have a major beneficial impact on those families at their most vulnerable. I want to wish my honourable friend continued success in progressing this important bill through the other place and look forward to seeing it becoming law.
Sara.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. It's a pleasure to speak in this bill today. An important bill which, as we've heard, has got cross-party support. So I want to start by congratulating my honourable friend for his success in steering this bill to the point, and I'm aware of how much work he has done with the government to get their support to make sure the legislation is in a place where it can go forward to the other place and hopefully gain royal assent. I'd also like to recognise the work of the Honourable Member for Broxtowe on the work he's done on behalf of his constituent Darren, and how he's worked constructively with my honourable friend the member for Ogmore to ensure that we have legislation in place today. I think he again spoke movingly about his constituents' tragic circumstances and the loss of his wife Bernadette, and why that's moved him to bring action before us, and as we've heard, a number of members have seen the importance of this. As the Honourable Member for Hyndburn has also spoken and talked about the work she's done following some very tragic circumstances for one of her constituents, and shown how members working constructively with the NHS in her case to make changes so that other people hopefully don't have to go through the same experiences that we've heard about today. And the Honourable Member for Stoke-on-Trent South also spoke, I thought, with great sincerity about why this legislation is so important. And as we heard, the bill, as amended, will disapply the employment conditions to which an employee's right to paternity leave is subject in the event of their partner dying. In effect, it will make paternity leave a day one right for the partner of a mother who has died with no continuity of employment test. The right is also extended to the tragic circumstances in which both the mother and child die, which is despite the fact that paternity leave is usually only taken for the purposes of caring for a child. And as we know, partners of mothers who die in or just after childbirth are currently not entitled to paternity leave if they have not met the continuity of employment requirements. And this means that some people find themselves in the unfortunate position that they're not entitled by right to paternity leave. And if their employer chooses not to show compassion and voluntarily provide leave, an individual could be left grieving for their partner, as well as undertaking the mammoth responsibility of being a single parent to their child without support from the workplace. And I think, as all members said, we find it very hard to imagine how anyone could face such a devastating situation with the added pressures of job insecurity on top. So I think it's right to acknowledge as well that most responsible and caring employers would react to such a devastating scenario with compassion and do the right thing by their employee, regardless of whether there was any law requiring them to do so. But by making this a legal requirement, it will mean the vanishingly small number of employers who don't act in that way will now have to, and it will also mean that there is one less thing for the employee to have to worry about. As my friend for Ogmore said, he made the unusual statement in this place that he wants this bill to help as few people as possible, but actually that is a very important point, because thankfully there will be very few people to whom this legislation will apply, because death during or just after childbirth is very uncommon. The excellent work our midwives and doctors perform mean the number of mothers who sadly pass away within 42 days of birth stands roughly at around 12 for every 100,000 births. Of course, each tragedy, each death is a tragedy and a profound loss, but I think we should recognise that it is a very small number of instances when those tragic circumstances occur. And the fact that it's taken Aaron's situation for it to come before us does mean that it's important that we act and show that there aren't going to be cracks where people will fall through legislative oversight. And as we know at present, the only right to statutory bereavement leave is for parents who have lost children up to the age of 18. But leave is a day one right, but the entitlement to pay is conditional on them having been in employment and earning over a certain amount over 8 weeks. Shared parental leave provisions also may not always help people in facing the situation this bill was originally drafted to help. So not only is there a time restriction on access to them, but income requirements can differ for the mother and partner. So the system is rather complicated, and we know that families have been discouraged from taking up shared parental leave, with figures showing that only 2.8% of partners decide to take it up. So, as we've heard, by virtue of the amendments agreed at the committee stage, by using paternity leave rather than parental leave as the vehicle for the entitlement, more people will hopefully be potentially protected. It will also mean that the surviving parents of adopted children, of children born through surrogacy arrangements, will be included, and we welcome those changes. And I commend again my honourable friend for working constructively with the Department and with the Minister to achieve the desired outcome. I also note in the bill with interest the new powers at clause 1.4, which provide for the ability to introduce through regulations enhanced redundancy protection to bereaved employees when they return from extended paternity leave, and for regulations to be made to allow bereaved parents to have keep in touch days during their extended paternity leave. It would be useful when the Minister responds to hear whether it's his current intention to use those powers to introduce regulations, and in particular, as my assumption would be, that the regulations would be analogous to current maternity leave provisions. But in conclusion, Mr Deputy Speaker, we are pleased to see the bill reach this stage, and we now wish it safe passage through to the other place. And again, I'd like to commend my honourable friend, the member for Ogmore, for his work on this, and I congratulate him on getting the bill to this stage.
Well, thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. Can I first express my thanks to the honourable member for Ogmore for bringing forward this very important bill. And can I say, for his collaborative efforts all the way through this. He is an absolute pleasure to work with, and has always displayed a real whip's pragmatism in terms of making sure we got this bill into the right place. So it did proceed as smoothly as possible to this point, and great to see so much cross-party support for it. Could I also thank my honourable friend from Broxtowe, who has obviously long campaigned on this issue and brought it to my attention. And as I say, I met with him in 2022, one of the first meetings I had in my ministerial role, and he joined me with Aaron, who's I know in the gallery today, and his son Tim, and we express our very best wishes to them for their campaigning. My old friend mentioned the power that people like Aaron have to influence thinking in this place, but that power has to be channeled through a willing and capable member of Parliament, minister, in due course, I'm sure. But and that's what he has displayed all the way through this. He has been persistent. His arguments have always been compelling, and persistence is very important in this space. He's always engaged with me, trying to find the best way to bring this forward, and he has found it. So I'm grateful for his efforts, and so many parents will be too. So I thank him very much for his work. The honourable member for Ogmore said, I think quite profoundly, there's no politics in bereavement. It's absolutely right that there should not be. It's always my pleasure, anybody's pleasure, to bring forward a private member's bill, and these things are always team efforts. And I was delighted to have that opportunity a couple of times myself as a backbencher with the Guardianship Act and the Parental Bereavement Act, indeed, which was first promoted by my honourable friend, the member for Colchester, and I picked that something up on the back of his persuasion to do that when I was drawn out quite high in the ballot myself. So it is always a pleasure to say you've made significant change in this place, and both those members who have contributed today and made the largest contribution to bringing forward this bill have done that in no uncertain terms. Unlike entitlement to maternity leave, which starts on the first day of a woman's employment, there is currently no day one leave entitlement for employed fathers and partners. As such, if a mother dies in the first year of a child's life, a father or partner who has not met continuity of service requirements for paternity or shared parental leave will not have the statutory right to take leave so they can care for their child. In those tragic but thankfully rare circumstances, they would need to rely on the compassion of their employer to provide them with adequate leave and job security. Having met Aaron, it was good to note that his employer did show that compassion in his particular situation, but it cannot be relied on as a matter of course. We decided, as my honourable friend, the member for Stoke-on-Trent South said, we decided to use the paternity leave elements of our framework to be able to deliver this legislation, which we think covers more circumstances. The new statutory entitlement will offer a lengthy day one leave entitlement for fathers and partners in the event of a death of the mother in the first year after the child's birth. And these are tragic circumstances, and it was very moving to hear my honourable friend's the member for Hyndburn refers to her constituent in these situations. I know members have asked in the past on the entitlement to be a paid right, in line with other entitlements to statutory parental pay, and for consistency of approach, The Government believes that statutory pay should only be available to those employees who meet continuity of service and minimum earnings tests. Other than in the case of small employers, employers are required to contribute towards the costs of statutory parental pay, as well as meeting the costs associated with their employees' absence from work. These requirements reflect the relationship between employer and employee and are designed to ensure that a parent has made a reasonable contribution towards their employer's business before that employer is required to administer statutory parental payments. In terms of the numbers of people this should apply to, as the Honourable Member for Ogmore stated, there are around 180 maternal deaths within 12 months of childbirth per annum. We cautiously assume that 50% of those eligible will take up the leave entitlement for a variety of reasons. For example, it is highly likely that those who are eligible for shared parental leave and pay will take that paid entitlement instead, and some employers may provide paid bereavement or compassionate or special leave. So while the numbers may be small, and we estimate less than 100 per annum, we are committed to ensuring that parents in this position have a dedicated leave entitlement. Once in force, this bill will allow bereaved parents to be provided with the support and protection they need during one of the most devastating periods of their lives. That support and protection will be available to employees regardless of how long they've been working for their employer, provided they fulfil other eligibility criteria. So we estimate the number affected by these circumstances is low. The emotional strain and physical toll of caring for a new child whilst also grieving the loss of your partner is unimaginable. I'm pleased that the Government can support this vital piece of legislation through the Houses. In both second reading and committee stage, the ambition of this bill gained cross-party support. We continue to discuss our plans for the bill with stakeholders, for example, the Federation of Small Business, the Institute of Directors, CBI, and charitable organisations such as Working Families and Pregnant and Then Screwed. And we look forward to working with them further to develop this legislation. Losing a partner is a truly horrific experience for anyone, and combining that terrible grief with the challenges of caring for a new baby must be incredibly hard. I very much echo the Honourable Member for Ogmore's earlier sentiment by expressing my sympathies to anyone who finds himself in this terrible situation. The United Kingdom has a range of generous entitlements and protections designed to help parents balance their family and work commitments and maintain their place in the labour market. For example, the UK has one of the most generous maternity leave entitlements in the OECD. We also offer paternity leave and pay to fathers and partners and enable a mother to share her maternity entitlement through shared parental leave and pay. We're also on track to deliver neonatal care leave and pay for those parents who need to take time to be with their baby when they're receiving neonatal care, and that's up to 12 weeks entitlement. In all, there are 7 new private members' bills which expand entitlements in the workplace. This legislation, the neonatal care legislation, the right to request flexible working, the tipping bill, the carers leave, which entitles those with a long-term dependent, a dependent with long-term care needs to take up to 1 week's care leave per year, the right to request predictable terms and conditions, predictable hours, if you like, Mr Deputy Speaker, and protection from redundancy for parents who are pregnant or on maternity or when they return to work. Very happy to give way.
I thank my honourable friend for giving way. He's making a very good point about the private members' bills that have been coming through this House to help with employment rights. He will recall that I have my own fertility protections in the workplace, and does he agree with me that it's important that we do, as much as we can, support people going through fertility treatment get paid time off work?
Well, she's a very doughty campaigner, and she's done this absolutely in the right way. And I know she was keen, potentially, for us to legislate in this particular area. As I say, we've had so many different improvements to workplace entitlements. We didn't feel there was parliamentary time available. But I know she'll keep campaigning on this, but also in the background, prior to legislation happening, she has worked very closely with many employers to make sure they do this on a voluntary basis, and I think she sets the right standard in showing what can be achieved even without legislation in this place. So I very much support her efforts. The Shadow Minister mentioned about whether we're considering some greater protections around redundancy in certain circumstances. That is something we're considering. I'm very happy to have a continued conversation with him around that. When enforced, this bill will ensure that the parent who is already grieving the loss of their partner does not have to worry about whether or not they will get the necessary leave from work to care for their child. As I stated at committee stage, the Government wholeheartedly supported the amendments tabled by the Honourable Member for Ogmore. These amendments are crucial to ensuring the effectiveness, fairness and inclusivity of this legislation, and support the Government's commitment to bolster the participation of parents in the workplace. As with most family leave and pay entitlements, much of the detail will be delivered through secondary legislation, which will come before the House in due course. By introducing this change to the legislative framework, we'll ensure that employees who lose their partner in the time surrounding childbirth or adoption have access to a period of leave to care for their new child. This change means that bereaved partners needn't rely on the goodwill of their employer to take time off work and, importantly, are able to stay connected to the labour market until they're able to return to work. To conclude, I would like to thank honourable members for their very valuable contributions to today's debate. This bill is an important extension of the support and protection we already provide to parents, in this case when they face one of the most challenging situations of their lives. As such, the Government takes pride in endorsing this private member's bill. Can I again thank my honourable friend, the member for Broxtowe, other honourable members who have made contributions, and finally the honourable member for Ogmore for continuing to work with me to develop this bill into a piece of legislation that will work effectively for parents and businesses alike, and conclude by just thanking our officials who have done such a fantastic job, and not just on this legislation. As I say, this and 6 other private members' bills, they worked under huge pressure this year and done a fantastic job, and I very much appreciate their efforts. And I hope this bill will progress to the next stage in Parliament very rapidly, Mr Deputy Speaker. Thank you.
With leave of the House, Chris Elmore.
Mr Deputy Speaker, with leave, can I thank all those members who have spoken in this third reading debate, the member for Hyndburn and the member for Stoke-on-Trent South. I will say to the honourable gentleman, he has been consistent in supporting this bill, and I'm grateful to him for always being here, it would seem, whenever this bill is being debated on the floor of the House, so I do thank him for it. I said at the beginning, Mr Deputy Speaker, I wanted to thank the organisations that have supported the passage of the bill, and I do so again. Organisations like Gingerbread, the Foster Society, the Childhood Bereavement Network have really been invaluable in their support in not just making sure that the bill works for parents, but also giving some of the living examples of people who are left behind to raise a child. And I've had a number of conversations with bereaved parents, some years and years ago, who have said what a difference this piece of legislation would have made if it had existed at the time, because nobody expects, Mr Deputy Speaker, to lose their partner in childbirth. So it's unimaginable in that sense, but they obviously all now reflect in those real terms. I couldn't conclude without paying tribute to the member for Broxtowe. He has been instrumental in convincing an opposition whip to take on his bill. I said at the time that's quite an achievement. But actually, it is because of Aaron and Tim and Bernadette that we are here today. I wish we weren't here for it, in truth, but we are, and it's because of people like Aaron and their dogged determination to convince their constituency MPs that the law could be changed as to why we are. And I leave my last tribute last but one to the officials again, but also to the member for Castle Point, who is instrumental in ensuring that so many bills pass at every sitting Friday, week after week. I can recall days when no PMBs passed, Mr Deputy Speaker, and when there was a previous PMB whip, and that was sort of the sport of the Friday. These days, many pass with good cause, and I'm really so pleased that members will support this today to go to the other place, and I look forward to it getting consent from there, and indeed from His Majesty the King.
The question is that the bill be now read the third time. As many of that opinion say aye. Aye. Contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Congratulations, Mr. Elmore, and our sincerest best wishes and thanks to Erin and Tim.